To uncover the origins of Stoic thought, we have to map the intellectual landscape of the ancient Mediterranean. That map begins with the earliest natural philosophers, men who looked up at the stars and tried to explain the mechanics of the cosmos. The map pivots with Socrates, who moved the focus of inquiry away from the heavens and into the city streets. From that pivot, a new school of thought eventually takes root in Athens, Stoicism. Stoicism emerged as an integrated, evolving tradition, rather than an isolated doctrine invented from scratch. It represents the direct systematization and continuation of Socratic ethics. This specific chain of thought stretches through the Hellenistic age and into the Roman imperial era, culminating in the philosopher Epictetus. Tracing this 500-year evolution provides the context required to parse Epictetus's specific claims about virtue and control. The philosophical era before 470 BCE is categorized under a single label, the pre-Socratics. It is a 19th century academic label and slightly misleading. Several of these thinkers actually lived and worked along Socrates. Their primary focus was distinct from his. They were the first natural philosophers and astronomers. They looked for the basic physical materials of the universe. Thales of Miletus, for instance, argued that all matter derived from water. Studying these early figures presents a significant mechanical problem. We do not have their complete original writings. This fragment of ancient papyrus represents the reality of the evidence. Historians reconstruct entire worldviews from isolated scraps of text. These quotes only survive because later doxographers, like Theophorus and Simplicius, copied lines into their own commentaries. While they established rational inquiry into the physical universe, they left the moral structure of human life largely unexplored. That exploration begins with Socrates, who was born in Athens in 469 BCE. He turned the philosophical lens inward, focusing on human morality instead of the movement of the stars. He asked a new set of questions. What is the nature of virtue, and can it be taught like a craft? Yet the man asking these questions never recorded his own answers. He wrote absolutely nothing down. Almost everything we know about his methods comes from the written dialogues of his student, Plato. Plato documented his teacher's primary tool, the elenchus, or the Socratic dialectic. By asking a target a series of pointed questions, Socrates would test an initial claim until he forced a logical contradiction, exposing the target's underlying ignorance. He did not use this tool to preach specific rules. He used it to force his fellow citizens to critically examine their own lives. Through this relentless questioning, he relocated the center of intellectual inquiry from the external cosmos to the internal human character. Nearly a century after Socrates' death, the Hellenistic age begins. Around 300 BCE, Zeno of Citium arrives in Athens and establishes a new philosophical school. The early leaders of this movement, Zeno, Cleanthes, and Chrysippus, largely originated in the eastern Mediterranean. Despite their diverse backgrounds, they chose to build their school in the intellectual hub of Athens. They taught their students in a public colonnade known as the Stoa Poikioi, or the Painted Porch, which gave the Stoics their name. This school would survive for over 500 years, moving through 3 distinct historical phases. While it began in Greece, the movement reached its zenith in the Roman imperial era through figures like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. Stoicism was a multi-generational, evolving institution, constantly refining its logic and ethics over centuries. The Stoics explicitly identified themselves as Socratics. They adopted a specific, radical claim made by Socrates during his trial: no harm can come to a good man in life or in death. They built their entire system around a strict thesis: genuine and complete human happiness requires nothing except moral virtue. Everything else, wealth, health, and social status, were categorized as morally indifferent. The Stoics revered the actual life and death of Socrates as the living model for their philosophy. His self-control and resilience in the face of an unjust prosecution demonstrated what a truly rational mind could endure. The founders of the Stoa took these Socratic ideals, added a rigorous framework of physics and logic, and forged an uncompromising daily discipline. By the 1st and 2nd centuries AD, this philosophical discipline had permeated the Roman Empire. Within this final phase, the teachings of Epictetus serve as the culmination of the Stoic journey. He took the bedrock of Socratic ethics and combined them with the systematic logic developed by early Stoic heads like Chrysippus. As seen in these maxims from his manual, he translated Athenian theory into practical rules for navigating life in the Roman Empire. Despite this focus on daily Roman life, his work relies on Socrates more deeply than any philosopher since Plato. This reliance makes Epictetus the most fiercely Socratic teacher of the entire late Stoic period. He directly imported the Socratic elenchus into his own classroom, using aggressive question-and-answer sessions to interrogate his students. His goal was to break down their assumptions, forcing them to rigorously examine their own value judgments and attachments. With this chronological map in place, the viewer is now prepared to directly engage Epictetus's discourses and manual in the next lesson.